I will tell you what it is that 13th Colony is doing is just short of amazing. We're going to talk about their Southern Bourbon Whiskey today on the My Bourbon Journey Whiskey Review channel. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for joining me today. Before we get into things, make sure you do me a favor. Make sure you subscribe, hit that like button. All of that stuff greatly helps. Super appreciate all of your support. With that being said, like I mentioned before, 13th Colony Distillery out of Americus, Georgia, was just down there recently, fell absolutely in love with not only the distillery, the people behind it. So I'm really excited to do the review today of their Southern Bourbon Whiskey. So what exactly is 13th Colony Southern Bourbon Whiskey all about? So this bourbon's coming in at 95 proof, has a mash bill of 70% corn, 21% rye, 9% malted barley. This is their own distillate. It is non-age stated, and the blends on this are anywhere from 4 to 6 years old. And the MSRP on this is right around $42.99, so let's call it between $40 and $45. With that being said, let's go ahead and dive into some of the nosing and tasting notes. First, let's go ahead and take a little look at the color on this. So as you can see, kind of a nice kind of copper type of color to it, moving the whiskey around in the glass. So far, pretty decent oils for a 95 proof bourbon. So, all right, let's go ahead and dive into the nose. So right away, my first initial thought is brown sugar. I think you get some really nice kind of butterscotch notes, slight or hint of like a black pepper. Very nice kind of like vanilla or vanilla bean sweetness. Hint of like a little bit of a corn, like a corn cob, corn husk, something along those lines. Nice barrel influence, maybe even more of a barrel char kind of note. Campfire, I'm going to say a little bit of that s'mores effect. So, you know, you got a little bit of that chocolate, s'mores, graham cracker. There's a little bit of that that's kind of coming out in this bourbon. Maybe even some soft leather and tobacco notes. The 95 proof is not going to blow you away proof-wise. Not picking up a lot of like real ethanol or anything coming off the glass at all. Overall, I think it's a beautiful nose, very approachable, feels like something that is just very sippable, very inviting, something along those lines. Little hint of like a tea, more of like a sweet tea, maybe even some honey notes that are there. Again, a little bit of that kind of graham cracker that I was mentioning before from the s'more side of it, you know, kind of like a light chocolate, more of like a milk chocolate, something like that. All right, more importantly, let's see how this one's going to taste. Cheers, guys. So the very first thing I want to identify is the mouthfeel. And I think oftentimes that gets a little bit overlooked. There is this nice softness of velvety kind of characteristic to it. Very kind of creamy, something I like, you know, when you get that kind of initial, you know, mouthfeel like that. That's kind of setting up where hopefully everything else is kind of leading. Like a light to medium dark fruit. What I mean by that is maybe those kind of like raisins, you know, plum, blackberry, things along those lines, where you get more intense fruit notes. This feels a little bit more along those lines. In addition, and it wasn't necessarily something I was picking up or maybe just overlooking on the nose, is there feels like there's this kind of pecan note to it. You are getting a little bit of that chocolate, a little bit of that barrel influence, but there feels like a little bit of that pecan kind of note to it. And it's something I'm kind of digging because it's starting to really allow for the oak and some of that other sweetness to kind of stand out. So when I think of like a pecan as kind of a dominant type of nut characteristic, this really feels like it's allowing the sweetness to shine on top of that kind of nuttiness or that pecan kind of note. And it's something I really like, is that it's allowing the balance of this to kind of work extremely well in my opinion. Nice little rye spice. It's not going to blow you away with spice. I am picking up a little bit more butterscotch on this one. There's, again, that velvety characteristic, and it's making me feel more of like what you'd get from like a Werther's candy. It feels and tastes a little bit like that. Again, like that, like maybe light honey, light caramel. Again, very approachable. This would be something that I would be very comfortable giving to someone who is, you know, new or new-ish to bourbon. And that's not slighting this. That's just saying that I think this is very approachable for someone from that standpoint, but still, even for any whiskey enthusiast who is just looking for that really nice kind of tried and true bourbon flavor, maybe with a little bit of a twist. I think this is better than a lot of what the heritage brands are putting out just from a daily sipping standpoint. I think with it being aged in the South, you're getting much more barrel influence and heavier notes on a 95 proof than you may get from some other places. So I think this already in itself has a leg up from that standpoint. And again, at that $40 to $45 price range, I think this is a must-have, must-buy kind of bourbon with the expectation of understanding what this is. Again, this is not 120, 125 proof. So you have to, again, like I just mentioned, you know, temper your expectations for this being extremely big and bold. It has those characteristics. It just doesn't have that proof behind it to allow a lot of those other flavors to really shine. But I think, again, for what this is, I think it's an absolutely fantastic bourbon, and one that I'll have around the house all the time. So the same thing with their rye whiskey, and I just did a review of that. So if you want to check out the rye whiskey review, I'll have that linked above and in the description below as well. Like I mentioned before, much more of that kind of sweet tea effect starting to kind of take over with the kind of caramel, vanillas, butterscotch, some barrel influence, little hint of like kind of maybe like a black pepper. Again, more of that dark fruit there, just kind of tampered down a little bit. So you've got all of these really beautiful notes all working extremely well with this bourbon, all at 95 proof. But again, the mouthfeel, that velvety texture, nice and creamy. Finish on it, I wouldn't say is overly long. I'm gonna say maybe medium, maybe a little bit less than medium, but overall, I think what it has to offer, generally speaking, it's a fantastic bourbon, you know, at that price point and really for what it has to offer. I'd go out on a limb and say this is a huge bonus or a gem of a bourbon coming out of the state of Georgia. So again, if this is something that you can find locally for you, or even online, I think, again, at that $40 to $45 price range, I think it's a steal. I think it's a fantastic bourbon and one that people really need to be introduced to because it does have a slightly different profile, but I'm gonna say it has a richer profile in that 90 to 95 proof kind of category. This feels like it's something that I would wanna lean a little bit more towards because I think the flavors that it has offers just a little bit more and something that makes the bourbon a little bit more enjoyable. So there you go, guys. Thank you guys so much for tuning in today. If this is something that you've had, definitely leave a comment below, not only for me, but for the others that kind of come in to check out the feedback and comments as well. I think that's just as important for others to hear your perspective than it is mine as well. So if you'd like to follow me, you can on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all of those places at My Bourbon Journey. If you'd like to help support the channel and or become part of the Mash and Journey Whiskey Club, make sure you check out the Patreon link in the description below. We're trying to do a lot of great things with the club, so I think it's something that you truly enjoy. So with that being said, remember, it's about the journey and not the destination. Make sure you try something today from 13th Colony Distillery out of Americus, Georgia. Cheers.